I recognize the member for Caroni East. Proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you for allowing me to join the debate into the 2023 fiscal budget. I would like to begin by thanking my political leader for a comprehensive and a compassionate reply to the budget. Deputy Speaker, my colleague, the Minister of Health, began his contribution a bit confused. He was confused of which ministry he represented. He started off speaking about tax refunds of multinationals and the Revenue Authority. It is no wonder we did so badly in our COVID-19 response. With regards to claims that my leader said sunshine would kill COVID-19, I would like to refute that fact. And I would like to refute that. And I would like to state, Deputy Speaker, sunshine does reduce the transmission of COVID-19 on surfaces. And that is all that she was trying to allude to. So in the temperate countries around the world, Deputy Speaker, they are expecting a surge in COVID-19 cases as the autumn and winter months approach. And that is a fact. Sunshine cannot kill a virus. That is not, no one ever said that. What we were trying to say is that sunshine reduces the transmission due to COVID-19 on surfaces. That is why you sanitize your hands every time you touch something. Deputy Speaker, looking back at the last 2 years and the claim that the member for Oroput said that we were all guinea pigs. At the time, I did not want to respond or enter the public debate into that statement. Reason being, I did not want to add to vaccine hesitancy at the time. But the fact is, Deputy Speaker, there is some truth to the statement, right? If you were to look at, Deputy Speaker, the clinical trials of vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines, while they were being produced, many COVID-19 drugs had issues, and some of them actually made their way to the public. And one of those drugs was the Johnson & Johnson
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 48-1, please. This is misinformation, and these very vaccines have been approved by international agencies. This is incorrect.
Please, members, right? You take ownership for your comments. Proceed.
So, Deputy Speaker, what I'm trying to say is that during the trial phases of many of these COVID-19 vaccines, which were brand new, COVID-19 was a novel virus. So many of these companies started from scratch to produce these vaccines, and not all vaccines made it to the marketplace. And some that did make it to the marketplace had issues, but they made it to the marketplace regardless. For example, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was stopped during its trial. Reason being, there were cases of severe blood clotting. And this actually came to fruition when it was released in the open market and millions of persons used the vaccine. To such an extent, Deputy Speaker, that the emergency use authorization of this vaccine in the United States was amended because in some cases it was found to be dangerous and could cause a possible lethal complication. So, you know, when you have to understand, everyone approached COVID-19 as a new virus, and statements were made. And looking back at it now, some drugs were better than other drugs. So by a member saying we were all guinea pigs, there was some truth to that statement. Not all of the vaccines were as healthy as they should be and were as effective as they should be, Deputy Speaker. Now, that is the point I was trying to make, right? Right? We have the Moderna vaccine, we have the Pfizer vaccine, we have the Sinopharm vaccine, and I'm not criticizing any vaccine, but I'm speaking on scientific basis. I'm speaking on the scientific basis of studies that have been done. And the United States have amended the emergency use authorization of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, Deputy Speaker. And we have that vaccine here available in Trinidad and Tobago. We bought, I think, 800,000 doses of that vaccine from the African Medical Supplies Platform. In fact, one FDA commissioner went as far as to say it was unethical for a doctor to prescribe that vaccine in the United States if another one was available. So I would just like to refute that fact. And I did not say this at the time, not to add to vaccine hesitancy, but I would say it now, 2 years after, and this vaccine has been in use by millions of persons. With regards to what the Minister of Health had said about former Member of Parliament, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, who is, yes, my political mentor. Yes, I trained under him in Caroni's. Yeah, and I would like you to know Dr. Gopi Singh is what I would consider a Renaissance man in Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Gopi Singh was a national cricketer. He played for the West Indies team while he was a student in medical school. Dr. Gopi Singh actually became a world-class medical specialist in obstetrics and gynecology. And then he became the second best Minister of Education we ever had in Trinidad and Tobago after my political leader. And he is a national medal awardee, the Shakonia Gold Medal. So, Minister, you know, be careful what you say about Dr. Gopi Singh. He has accomplished a lot more than you. The rest of what the minister has said, I will refute while I make my presentation. So I would like to begin by thanking every single healthcare worker and frontline worker in Trinidad and Tobago. They have contributed to keeping our essential services functional during the heights of the pandemic. They are our modern-day heroes, serving Trinidad and Tobago in our nation's supermarkets, drugstores, maxis, taxis, and yes, in our health institutions. We must never forget their service to Trinidad and Tobago and their fellow man. Deputy Speaker.
Please, across the floor. I'll try and avoid it, please.
Deputy Speaker, our healthcare workers, they deserve every cent that they will receive, and I dare say even more. What about improved working conditions, reasonable terms of employment, and mental health assistance? The Simonga report spoke of healthcare workers feeling abandoned by management. What in this fiscal budget addresses that, Minister? I had hoped this administration would have sought to reward all frontline workers and not to only single out those in the Ministry of Health. Many did not have the benefit of being able to work from home. What about those that kept our oil rigs pumping and those patrolling our nation's borders, both on land and sea? Those who braved COVID-19 to do their duties. We have, Deputy Speaker, we have lost over 30 police officers and many more from the fire service, Coast Guard, and the Army to COVID-19. What about their families? Did they not keep us safe during COVID-19? Where is their compensation? I expected the Minister of Finance during this bumper fiscal year to find a way in his heart to bring an improvement in the standard of living of every Trinbagonian citizen. And that did not happen. We have seen our roads destroyed during this PNM administration, and it has now become more expensive to use them. The oil and gas of this country belongs to every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. The Prime Minister wants to tell citizens on how to use fuel. This is while he is transported in a convoy in around 4 to 5 Toyota Land Cruisers. Do as I say and not as I do. It is no secret life in Trinidad and Tobago is becoming more and more difficult. People yearn for the return of Kamla Persad Bissessar to the reins of power in Trinidad and Tobago. How much more can people take? Every single ministry is failing, and the quality of life that we have seen in 2010 to 2015 is now a distant memory. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance spoke of saving lives and livelihoods. But many of this administration policies were on the extreme end of the spectrum of what nations implemented around the world. We have fallen so far back in terms of economic development that a small rebound is now being heralded as recovery. This government has massacred livelihoods with no regard to the medium and small business owner. The small street food vendor was banned because persons would stand in a line outside to purchase doubles. There's a very low chance of getting COVID-19 outdoors. Fast food was banned because workers in the kitchen would mingle, but Massey was allowed to prepare food and sell fried chicken in their supermarkets. How was that possible? Who prepared the food? Else, the majority of small vendors became destitute during this time, losing means to care for themselves and their families, and especially in Caronis. Not many have been able to reopen. We have literally turned the hands of time back in Trinidad and Tobago, with families retreating to seeking a living off the land and not venturing into entrepreneurship. The Minister of Finance also spoke, as well as the Minister of Health, of the global number of cases of deaths due to COVID-19. So he hoped by using a big sounding number, the number of deaths in Trinidad and Tobago would sound very small. And allow me to analyze the figures that he presented. We had one of the world's most restrictive border policies during the height of the pandemic. Citizens, sons and daughters of Trinidad and Tobago were not allowed to return home. They were not even allowed to enter and to be quarantined. And what this meant was that we severely restricted the viral load entering the country. And thus our COVID-19 cases should have been much lower than most of the other countries around the world and in the region, such as the United States and Great Britain, where travel was not stopped. But somehow, we ended up with one of the highest rates of death per 100,000 persons in the world. Almost number one. Deputy Speaker, with just over 4,200 COVID-19 deaths and a case fatality ratio of 2.3%, we have recorded 300 deaths per 100,000 persons in Trinidad and Tobago. 300 deaths per 100,000 persons. We are currently ranked as the 173rd worst performing country out of 195 countries. We are number 22 from the bottom of the list. St. Kitts and Nevis is ranked as number 101 with 86 deaths per 100,000. Dominica is ranked as 105 with 95 deaths.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is the source of this information?
Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Center, 26th of September 2022. Dominica is at 105, ranked as 105 with 95 deaths per 100,000. And Jamaica is at 115 with 111 deaths per 100,000 citizens. So to put that into context, for every 100,000 persons in Trinidad and Tobago, we had 190 more deaths in Trinidad and Tobago than Jamaica. 2,000 more persons died here in Trinidad and Tobago as compared to Jamaica if we had the equivalent population, right? Why is this? After the parallel healthcare system and weekly media briefings, billions were spent and yet to be audited. There were systematic failures in our healthcare response. This administration, through the Minister of Health, failed everyone with his policies and leadership. Citizens died who did not have to die. Poor people died who do not have a voice to say what happened. We have the highest death rate in CARICOM. Ask the minister explain that. He was talking about Yemen. Yemen is undergoing a civil war. They do not have health care. They are like Ukraine and Russia, right? Yemen's rate is 18, and then after that it comes to North Korea, where we have no data, right? We are number 22 from the bottom of the list, Deputy Speaker. Our health infrastructure was totally overwhelmed. There was a systematic failure in delivering quality health care to citizens. to overflowing wards with inadequate drugs, equipment, and medical personnel. And finally, cockroach and moss-infested step-down facilities. Patients passed when in many cases they could be here with us today, with their family, with their friends, and with their life intact. Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister says that money was spent here to keep us alive. In fact, 1 year ago, Minister Diyal Singh is on record of saying that the Ministry of Health spent $480 million on the country's COVID-19 response since the beginning of the pandemic. This sum must be considerably more right now. The CAF Development Bank of Latin America has recently approved $1.65 billion in financing for a number of countries, including Trinidad and Tobago. How much of that total will our country receive? And how much have we received already? Deputy Speaker, we have been told that COVID-19 funds were channeled into infrastructure, human resources, consumables, buildings, facilities, paying for quarantine, buying equipment and personal protective equipment. I am calling for an audit into the spending of COVID-19 funds during the period March 2020 to present day. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance, in his budget speech, chose the period during the surge of 2021 Easter weekend in Tobago to the period just after the Delta surge in early 2022 to highlight a reduction in the number of positive cases. Not one mention of the PNM-initiated CMongle report into the daily mass deaths at our hospitals. At one point, over 30 deaths per day, to the point where mortuaries were overwhelmed. And Deputy Speaker, they banned cremations, right? They banned cremations during this time. Persons of the Hindu religion were not allowed to put their relatives and friends and loved ones to rest in a respectful way that we are accustomed to. And we resent that. We resent that. Right? Why did they do it? There is no scientific basis for what they did in banning cremations. There is no scientific basis. Why did the minister not indicate if systemic deficiencies in our nation's healthcare infrastructure?
Member.
48-1. We have gone on for the last 15 minutes on COVID. 14-1.
I am responding to what the Minister of Finance has in his budget speech. If you read it, I could actually quote the page I'm responding to, page 107, sir. Right, Deputy Speaker.
Member, again, it's your time. If you see it that way, proceed.
Thank you very much. Right, why did the minister not indicate if systemic deficiencies in our nation's health infrastructure would be addressed via this budget?
Mr. 49.2 on the relevance of, on the point of sub judice, the issue of standardization and cremations, etc., and burial rights is a matter before the courts. In fact, whilst the state won several of those matters, there's one remaining matter. So I'd just like the honourable member to avoid that topic, please.
1 second. Okay, so member, with regards to the aspect...
I moved on.
Hold on. Right, with regards to the sub judice issue in Standing Order 49, with regards to the cremation and those things, I'd like you to stay clearly away from that.
No problem.
Right? So proceed.
No problem. Right, so Deputy Speaker, I was speaking about COVID-19 issues, but I was expecting the minister to state that many of the deficiencies were not necessarily only about COVID-19, but issues of mental health, drug deficiencies, and lacking of equipment in our nation's hospitals. The 105-page report was a damning indictment on the leadership of Minister Diyal Singh as the Minister of Health. The committee's report tells of staff shortages being common, doctors and nurses having to perform non-medical functions, and of being overworked to the point of exhaustion. Poor working conditions were highlighted, with nurses being made to work many long hours in PPE. My leader, Kamala Prasad-Bissessa, has consistently called for additional nursing and medical staff to be hired in order to release the stress placed on our doctors and nurses. Short-term locum contracts resulted in great uncertainty and low morale among our young doctors, and it's a sad confirmation of earlier UNC revelations of major human resource infractions in the healthcare system. The fact that a single nurse was assigned to as many as 30 patients also speaks to a systemic failure to provide adequate nursing resources. The lack of foresight to order adequate quantities of tocilizumab is yet another indictment on Minister Dayal Singh. Doctors had to cope with shortages of midazolam, methylprednisolone, and propofol. Dexamethasone was used in cases where methylprednisolone was indicated. I commend Professor Seemangal's committee for its patriotic duty. His entire team gave a true assessment of our performance at that time. Now the question must be asked, how many of the committee's recommendations have been implemented with this budget? He did not say that, Minister, right? Professor Seemangal and his team spoke of poor data management system, a recommendation that supplies from C40 be continuously open 7 days a week, a proposal that oxygen concentrators be purchased for all large institutions. He spoke of mental health support for staff, on-site recreational facilities for all regional health authorities, an assessment and equality of the delivery of meals. People with their family, their child in these step-down facilities getting our bread and cheese 2-3 hours after breakfast. That is not good enough. Substandard bathroom facilities, COVID-19 drugs not being procured, healthcare workers on a short month-to-month contract, unable to take a vacation, unable to apply for sick leave, right? They have no long-term security for their family. They cannot get a bank loan. They cannot plan for postgraduate training, right? Cruel and unusual punishment, Minister. Deputy Speaker, the Minister also spoke about taking a leadership role in health development to ensure fairness, to protect social values of equity, and to secure access of healthcare for low and vulnerable groups, low income and vulnerable groups. This is on page 109. But how could this be achieved when mysterious occurrences happen, such as on the 25th of May 2021? Questions remain after 4 senior specialist doctors were transferred out of the Cuba hospital. And then you want to come here and bring whistleblower legislation to Parliament? The facility's only lung specialist was reassigned when patients were dying from not being able to breathe. This again was poor people they were trying to save. The Prime Minister does his medical in California, USA, not California, Dow Village, Cuba. Madam Deputy Speaker, the question should now be asked, have any of these doctors been rotated back into the Cuba hospital, or was this a disciplinary measure against them for speaking up? Deputy Speaker, we also have it reported in one of our daily newspapers of the atrocities in another hospital, but smartly he did not reveal his identity, otherwise he may have been rotated out. On the 15th of December 2021, we had 32 COVID-19 deaths and the virtual collapse of our nation's health infrastructure under Minister Dayal Singh. A junior doctor bravely went to the Express newspaper to state the working conditions of healthcare workers after hundreds of millions of dollars was spent on COVID-19. Where the money went? At the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, this doctor spoke of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion and a doctor-patient ratio of 1 to 60. Needless to say, patients died. There was not enough manpower to care for them. It spoke to the level of care a critically ill patient would receive in our nation's premier hospital. The minister is on record of saying that $500 million taxpayers' dollars was spent on hiring additional human resources, procuring consumables and upgrading infrastructure. But we have confirmation from this doctor of a lack of oxygen tanks, with patients' health being compromised while tanks were being refilled. So $500 million and he couldn't buy enough tanks, right? According to another report, our young doctors were under-equipped to do their job, as they had to share 2 oxygen saturation monitors for 60 patients. So at any one time, you only have the oxygen saturation of 2 patients out of in a ward of 60. People going to die. How does the minister also explain when the doctor reported of a lack of PPE and having to work on COVID-19 patients without gloves? Little is known of the circumstances and associated factors related in the deaths of our hospitals. As they say, dead men tell no tales. Moving on, Deputy Speaker, I'd like to also speak on the Children's Life Fund, which was created to provide funding and critical support for children needing life-saving tertiary level healthcare services not available in this country. And I would like to thank my political leader, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, for creating this fund and for donating to this fund. She donated her own part of her own salary as well as some ministers. And along the way, there were many success stories, including the family of Daryl Frank and the proud parent of baby Darius. And this was in 2013. Darius got a new lease on life, having life-saving surgery in Colombia when he was only 2 weeks old. He was diagnosed with an atrial septal defect, a condition where there is a hole in the heart of the 2 upper chambers. The surgery could not be performed in Trinidad and Tobago, and the family applied to the Children's Life Fund for financial assistance, and they got it. The chief secretary at the time, Orville London, said that a newborn baby always reminds us of how important life is, and that he was delighted to see the surgery was successful and that the family could have a future with their son. Deputy Speaker, fast forward to today. It's a horror story. In 2021, we have the death of a teenager while he was awaiting treatment, and it raised questions about the operations of the Children's Life Fund. Tristan Ramlochan, and may he rest in peace, 14 years of age at the time, had acute lymphoblastic leukemia and died on April the 14th. Ramlochan's parents made valiant efforts to raise the $90,000 US for his treatment, and they were unable to do so. They had GoFundMes, they had barbecues, and they were not able to attain the funds, and the unfortunately young man died. So there are lingering concerns that this fund is not accessible to seriously ill children. Deputy Speaker, in fact, we have Senator Diyal Singh advocating that the Children's Life Fund cover patients with beta thalassemia major, a major blood disorder that reduces the body's production of hemoglobin. And this disease is characterized by severe anemia requiring regular red blood cell transfusions. Some of the persons that have been denied access to the Children's Life Fund are Shannon Luke, Terrence Chadu, and Jovi Mitchell, all who were told that they did not qualify because the condition isn't life-threatening. And these parents have had to raise funds through barbecues and GoFundMe campaigns. Exactly the situation the Children's Life Fund was created to address. And my leader spoke about that this morning, and the fact that when we return to power, the legislation would be modified and amended to make amendments to allow these persons such as this to access the Children's Life Fund. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to move to the CDAP program, which the Minister of Health also alluded to. This program was introduced in 2003 to help citizens with a range of chronic diseases to get access to costly prescription drugs free of charge. And CDAP was introduced also as a social support service to citizens in need. But in June of 2018, a decision by Cabinet made modifications to the CDAP, and these modifications have had disastrous consequences to the CDAP program. New pharmacies are now required to pay a $68,000 startup fee. The average new pharmacist does not have that money to pay to start up a CDAP program. Pharmacies before this did not have to pay this money. And when asked about this concern, Minister Dayal Singh said that there are enough pharmacies in CDAP. And what this has done, it has prevented many rural pharmacies from getting onto this program, defeating the objective of this initiative. Also, the pharmacy board head spoke of the ministry buying the cheapest medication for CDAP, and he went on to say it concerned him about the issue of counterfeit drugs. He insisted that all medication in Trinidad and Tobago, including CDAP drugs, be tested. And he went on to say in Trinidad we have limited facilities to test these medication. He said the Ministry of Health is choosing the cheapest medication possible to put on CDAP. Rahman also said that there is an issue of a reliable supply of payment to the pharmacies. He went on to say, as a comparison, that the only way to get your road paved is to burn tires. And what he meant to say is that the only way to get payment is to stop supplies, and then the ministry would hasten to pay. So, Minister, probably in the pharmacy that you were in, you should have asked the pharmacist if he got paid for the CDAP. Moving on, Deputy Speaker. On page 11, the Minister of Finance spoke about the upward trend in confirmed COVID-19 cases, but no significant increase in vaccine uptake. And Deputy Speaker, he stated that he has not seen any significant increase in vaccine uptake, which remains at 51% of our national population, and that the virus is losing its virulence. Deputy Speaker, since the dismantling of health restrictions, we have had 90 deaths in August of 2022 to COVID-19. We have had over 50 deaths in September of 2022 because of COVID-19, and I don't know the exact figure because they have stopped giving daily briefings. Well, the numbers are low if compared to the murder tally. Truth be told, this administration is comfortable with losing 50 persons a month to COVID-19. Currently, COVID-19 is killing almost no one under the age of 40, and hospitalization numbers are manageable. The death and hospitalization rates also remain low among older people who are boosted. And in all of these groups, severe COVID-19 illness is concentrated among people who have significant medical problems. And what this means is that booster shots matter. So I'm going to booster shots now. Boosters offer the biggest benefit in the reduction of severe illness among vulnerable patients. And for people who are more vulnerable to severe COVID-19 because of their age or health condition, the best advice is to stay up to date with your booster shot. During the last mid-year review, Minister Dayal Singh indicated that $12 million was allocated for purchasing vaccines. Among them, he said, was Moderna's bivalent vaccine, which has now been approved by the FDA and dozens of countries around the world. So, Minister, have we made a pre-order of Moderna's bivalent vaccines pending WHO approval? You spoke nothing about this. Is the minister saying that vaccinated elderly and vaccinated immunocompromised patients must take Sinopharm and Johnson & Johnson as the booster shot for the Omicron variant, which is now the dominant form of COVID-19, the dominant form of the coronavirus in Trinidad and Tobago? These vaccines were formulated against the original Wuhan strain and not against the now dominant and extremely contagious Omicron subvariant BA4 and BA5. In a recent study in Japan, COVID-19 herd immunity was near 90% after the latest Omicron wave, but that protection was shown to diminish after a matter of months. And what that means is that COVID-19 is here to stay, it's endemic, and our elderly persons and immunocompromised must be boosted, right? We have consistent high daily cases and deaths from COVID-19, and our vaccinated citizens have no access to these reformulated shots unless they were to leave the country. Currently in Trinidad and Tobago, we only have access to the Sinopharm and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. All Pfizer vaccines having expired many, many months ago. And as I told you just before, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been limited in its use by the United States Food and Drug Administration. The FDA said in a statement that the change is being made because of the risk of a rare and dangerous clotting condition called thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome after receiving the vaccine. Healthy persons could die after taking this vaccine, and that is why it has been limited in the United States, right? The Minister of Health also refused to state if he would order the antiviral drug Paxlovid from Pfizer and used by President Biden when he contracted COVID-19. Clinical trials of this drug have shown that it reduces the risk of hospitalization and death by 88% within 5 days of starting symptoms in unvaccinated persons. So 4 out of 5 unvaccinated persons in Trinidad and Tobago could literally be alive today if we had this drug. At some point in time, Paxlovid or its generics will enter Trinidad and Tobago, and the question will be asked, why did we not acquire it earlier? The CMO is on record of saying that a cost-benefit analysis will have to be done to determine the feasibility of purchasing these life-saving drugs. And vaccines are available for the public to be vaccinated. But what if you don't want a vaccine? There are many persons that just don't want a vaccine. I move around my constituency, and many elderly persons, when you ask them if they are vaccinated, they say they don't want the vaccine. This drug will be able to save persons' lives. It'll be able to reduce the strain on the hospital admissions. Minister Dial saying Pfizer has signed an agreement with 35 generic manufacturers in 12 different countries to provide Paxlovid to low and middle income countries. You can order it now. It will save 4 out of 5 unvaccinated persons, as well as 100% of vaccinated persons who take it. What is the point of spending billions of dollars on hospital infrastructure to save lives when you could just spend a fraction of the money to actually do so, right? But then again, Deputy Speaker, it's just poor people we're talking about here, right? Deputy Speaker, moving on. I have to drink some water. New hospitals. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister of Health indicated that citizens would have equitable access to quality healthcare through our modern health facilities. I would like to thank my political leader for the vision to plan, design, and build the Cuba Hospital in one term in office, an institution integral to the recovery of thousands of citizens from COVID-19. I would like to thank her for her vision for starting the Arima and Point Fortin Hospital, as well as the San Fernando Teaching Hospital. Without the development of our country's healthcare infrastructure during the period of 2010 to 2015, we would have never been able to withstand the storm of COVID-19. I would like to remind the goodly minister that the Arima Hospital was commissioned by Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the partnership government on the 3rd of October 2013. The then Arima Member of Parliament, Roger Samuel, announced the project at a post-cabinet press briefing that in a government-to-government agreement with China, the hospital would be built at a cost of $1.6 billion. This was in the making after Kamala Persad-Bissessar held bilateral talks with the Chinese President Xi Jinping during his 2013 state visit to Trinidad and Tobago. Deputy Speaker, the Point Fortin Hospital. The People's Partnership Government turned the sod on to begin construction of the $1.2 billion Point Fortin Hospital at Egypt Village, Point Fortin. The project was executed on a government-to-government arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago and Austria, who were also involved in the construction of the San Fernando Teaching Hospital. In fact, the then Minister of Health, Fuad Khan, said he met no plans in place to build a new hospital in Point Fortin when he entered office in 2011. This is a UNC initiative. He also noted that the hospital was earmarked for construction after seeing the state of disrepair of the old Point Fortin Hospital. Moving on to the Sandy Grande Hospital. In the 2019 budget speech, Minister of Finance, Colin Imbert, stated that the new Sandy Grande Hospital would be built for $850 million. Minister of Dayal Singh added that it would be built using the same design, the same contractor, and the same model as the Point Fortin Hospital. I would like to ask the Minister of Health, what is the final cost of the Sandy Grande Hospital? Is it still $850 million, sir? Deputy Speaker, the Minister is on record of saying the Sandy Grande Hospital.
Member, yes, you have just about 4 more minutes in your initial speaking time. You have an additional 10. You care to avail yourself of that?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Right. The Minister is on record of saying the Sandy Grande Hospital will now cost taxpayers an estimated $1 billion, $150 million than originally planned. It gets even stranger with the Port of Spain General Hospital Central Block, which was supposed to start on the 19th of May 2019. The $1 billion project was supposed to be completed through a public-private partnership with Shanghai Construction Group Caribbean Limited. In fact, in January of 2022, it was reported that SCG had served a termination notice on Udicott and quit the $1 billion project. It will now cost taxpayers at least $110 million more and an additional 2 years to complete construction on the Port of Spain General Hospital Central Block. Running out of time, so I will find other things to talk about. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to move to my constituency quickly. The purpose of a national budget is to manage the affairs of a country and to improve the lives of its citizens. And if so, Deputy Speaker, this package is a colossal failure. Let me briefly examine this budget's direct impact on the people of Caronis. Caronis is not only the center of the island of Trinidad, but is also the heart and soul of the country. It is an electoral community of ambitious, hardworking nationals with rich arable lands of agro and light manufacturing. Only a few years ago, Deputy Speaker, communities of Caronis were relatively safe and secure. Today, our quiet districts are killing fields. They are dumps for murder victims. They are open drug turfs and centers of human carnage. This is most evident in Kelly Village, a beautiful community with law-abiding citizens. Deputy Speaker, during this administration's tenure, Kelly Village has become the scene of some of the most horrific crimes committed to date. Almost every day, there are gory murders, wild shootings, noisy drug parties, and other wanton acts of violence. There are so many brutal slayings that it is difficult to keep count. Victims of all ages and of all groups of society. In short, Kelly Village is now one of the murderous districts in Trinidad and Tobago. This government, Deputy Speaker, this government has turned Kelly Village into Killing Village. I have brought this serious matter to Parliament on several occasions and pleaded for increased police patrols, the construction of our police posts, CCTV cameras, and other measures. I've appealed for the reactivation of police youth groups and other creative solutions. Kelly Village, Deputy Speaker, is a small community, and law enforcement authorities have extensive resources and modern resources. The Minister of National Security has offered explanations, excuses, and guarantees. He has issued assurances, commitments, and undertakings. He has tossed around all sorts of high-sounding language in a weird accent that I could barely understand. But still, homicides take place. Killings have become as common as flooding in Kelly Village. It is extremely disturbing that the people of Caroni East and specifically Kelly Village cannot look forward to a reprieve from the horrible crime scourge. There's nothing in this budget that offers hope for Kelly Village and other crime-affected communities in this country. So the people of Caroni East, pray for the best, but expect the worst. And moving on very quickly, I would just like to state that I would like some help with the, I wrote to the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries on October 2021 on behalf of the residents and farmers of Hercules Trace in Ravinsab with regards to the structural integrity of that bridge and for the farmers of Ravinsab Main Road. Approximately 100 persons use this bridge daily. And at a recent site visit, upon seeing the condition of the bridge, I have developed a great concern for the vehicles that must traverse this bridge on a daily basis. The bridge is an old, dilapidated wooden bridge with many rotting sections, and no safety railing. The residents have indicated to me that the condition of the bridge is so bad that garbage collection trucks can no longer cross and are unable to collect garbage for the residents. The bridge is also used by heavy machinery and farmers of the area. I will also appeal to the Minister of Agriculture and Land Fisheries about the bridge located at Lalo Trace, which I spoke about in the last budget. And the bridge has since fallen into the river, and it needs a complete reconstruction. In August of 2021, due to heavy rain, the resulting excessive water volume and water pressure, the structural integrity of the bridge failed and it collapsed. It is now impossible to both pedestrian and vehicular traffic. This bridge affects over 50 residents and over 20 farmers in this area who rely on it to transport their produce. These farmers have supplied produce to the NAMDEFCO National COVID-19 Relief Hampers, and I'm asking for some help in the restoration of this bridge. Residents include pregnant women, elderly, as well as there's no street lighting towards this bridge. I would also like to speak to the Minister of Education, who I wrote on the 7th of April 2022 concerning the inadequate conditions at the community center in which the Londonville Presbyterian School is now housed. Currently, 90 students are housed there temporarily. The original arrangement was for 60 students in 2017, but currently, because this has been going on for over 5 years now, it includes standard 4 and 5. There's inadequate space for the students, with some classrooms being shared with up to 3 classes. Infants with 28 students share 400 square feet. Standard 1, 2, and 3 are in one room, 33 students in 544 square feet. Standard 4 with 21 students are in a 170 square foot room. Standard 5 with 8 students is in a 160 square foot room. These small classroom sizes affect the ability to learn, and the rooms offer no distancing between the students, which prevents social distancing during a pandemic. This facility does not also include a quarantine room or a sick bay in the event that a student has flu-like symptoms. Students also attend school via a private bus, so should a student develop symptoms, there's nowhere to house the student. The washroom facilities are also inadequate, with just 3 for boys and 3 for girls. The washrooms are also used by the public, who also use the community center. The school has 2 male cleaners, and we are asking that there at least be 1 female cleaner for the benefit of the female students. And the locks on the washrooms also do not work. Parking space is inadequate. Deputy Speaker, moving on. I thought the Minister of Health would have used this opportunity to speak of the international concern of monkeypox, which the World Health Organization has said is a public health emergency of international concern. He made no mention of if we would get monkeypox vaccines, and I'm very concerned about this, seeing that Carnival is coming up. Currently, there are over 64,000 cases across 100 countries around the world. Borders are open, and people are traveling freely as they were before COVID-19. Cases have been reported as close as the Bahamas, Barbados, Jamaica, and Venezuela, the U.S. has been unable to control the spread of the virus. And I would have liked the minister to give us an update on when PAHO is giving us those vaccines. Minister Dayal Singh has given no timeline for the arrival of much-needed vaccines, and this leaves healthcare workers such as myself and the general public exposed. Our nation is unprepared, and our vulnerabilities are enormous. Minister Dayal Singh, please at some point state when and how many vaccines are to arrive in Trinidad and Tobago. We must immediately expand testing capacity and educate Trinbagonians on how to stay safe. Deputy Speaker, I'd also like to speak very quickly about poliomyelitis. The minister also has not brought this to our attention. In the United States, and the Pan American Health Organization Director, Dr. Carissa Etienne, has set to ramp up our vaccination of polio, and she sounded this warning, advising that immunization is the only way to suppress polio. Currently, regionally, the vaccination coverage is about 79%, the lowest since 1994. And we would need over 95% to have herd immunity in Trinidad and Tobago. And what happened is during the last 2 years during COVID-19, many parents did not stay up to date with their children's vaccination status with regards to these viruses. And we have a lower vaccination rate right now. I thought the minister would have spent some time, educating the public about what is happening with our poliomyelitis situation. And in closing, how much more time do I have, Deputy Speaker?
I have just about 3 minutes.
Thank you. And in closing, I would appeal to the Minister of Health to modernize the Dental Act. Just quickly, right now we have many illegal dentists practicing in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, many from Venezuela, and they are advertising openly on Instagram and Facebook and all these media, and the general public doesn't know who's a registered dentist and who is not a registered dentist. And many of these Venezuelan dentists are offering services at 1/3 and 1/4 the price of Trinidadian and Trinbagonian dentists. And we do not know the level of safety that they have in their offices. If they have an autoclave machine, if they are using gloves, if they are sterilizing equipment, we know nothing about these dentists. So we are asking the minister to please allow the modernization of the Dental Act to allow prosecution of non-registered persons performing dentistry, right? Also, as it stands in law, nothing prevents a person who is not a registered dentist from importing, gaining access to, and being in possession of drugs, dental equipment, and other paraphernalia pertaining to dentistry. And we need a law to stop that, right? There are too many quacks, too many illegal practitioners of dentistry in Trinidad and Tobago. So I make appeal to you. With those few words, Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute in this debate, and thank you very much.